Hi, this is Deborah from Dinglefoot Scrapbooking, and this week I'm going to show you how to make just an interesting background for your cards or your scrapbook pages. This would be a neat design if you stamped it the whole way across the bottom of a scrapbook page, but we're just going to do it on a card, and then you can take the technique and move it to other projects. So these are all individual stamps, and if you get stamp sets, sometimes they'll have a whole bunch that are very similar, but they're different sizes. So I just took 4 different stamps that are kind of similar and just placed them on my acrylic block. So I'm going to be stamping my background on this top sheet of paper. If you can see, I have my beige card for the background, and then I have an accent paper, and this one even has a little bit of a tear in it, and that's not going to matter because we're going to work with that anyway. I've been trying to use up my scraps, and I have so many of them, and sometimes they get a little bent up or torn, and as they're sitting around in the box and you're going through all the papers, they get kind of messed up, but I can still use it. So it has a little rip, and we're just going to make it work for our card. And my stamping is going to be done on this striped paper. Now, I placed these stamps on my block already, and so I have that ready to go, and then I just have some other little pieces of leftover paper, a white piece and then another piece of the red, and that's going to be a little place where we stamp our greeting. And this one, since these cards are kind of neutral or earthy tones, you could use it for a man's card, but since my stamps are a little bit fancy, it probably wouldn't work for that. But so I'm going to make mine into a thank you card, and I have the easiest, tiniest little thank you stamp. It's one of those I got in a Michael's dollar bin. They're great. You can use them for all sorts of things. So I'm going to stamp that and emboss it in gold. But first of all, for the stamp design, I'm going to take a red ink, and I think I'll use this one right here. And this one, just going to ink up my stamps really well. I want to use 2 different colors for my little design I'm making. So we'll ink up this red, and I'm just going to start maybe off the paper just a little bit, just to make it look a little more like it wasn't planned so much. So we'll just stamp on there, and then I'm going to ink it up again. And after this is finished, I'm going to wipe it off and stamp right over top of my design again. Let's see, I think I'll try to, maybe I'll turn my design around a little bit. And I'm just going to stamp kind of at a slant. So I'm kind of starting at a corner and just moving up a little bit. And if you want to add more, you can. Maybe I'll just put a little bit right there, just so it's coming off the edge of my paper again. Now I'm going to take a minute and wipe off my stamps, and then we're going to re-ink our stamps in black. This design looks pretty neat as is, but if you want to, you can take another darker color and go over the top. So I think I'm going to try it with black and see what that looks like. Just make it look a little different, and I'm going to stamp slightly to the side. Let's start the other direction. So I'm going to start with my smaller stamps down here, since I have a bigger stamp there. Just go off the page just a little bit. And then I'm going to ink them up again. Let's see, I think I'll turn it around here. Just to add a little interest to our paper. So if you ever have a paper that's plain, even if it's plain white or something, and you just want a little bit of a design on it, just make your own stamp design, and it just adds so much to your project. Now back to this paper that is ripped a little here on the side. And I've done this before with papers that are a little bit wrinkled. I just take them and crumple them up. Another nice solution is if your papers are wrinkled or torn just a little bit and you still want to get some use out of them, you can run them through an embossing folder. I've done that before too, and by the time it has some other kind of textured design on it, you can't really tell that there was ever a problem with it. So, I need to undo this paper, and you can flatten it out as much or as little as you want. I'm just going to kind of flatten it out here. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some glue to the back and get that stuck onto my card. So you could use your glue stick, or I think about any type of adhesive would work, even a spray glue or a tape type of glue. So I'm just going to get that nicely covered, and we're just going to press that right onto the front of our card, just as we would usually do. And now before we put this one on the front, we're going to take this little strip of paper. I just took a cutting from this one and a piece of white paper and just glued them together, so it's going to look kind of like a lace. I'm going to get my embossing powder ready, and I'm going to ink up my thank you stamp, and I think I'll just use the same black for that. And just going to aim for the middle of my paper here. Just put our thank you right on there. And then quickly, while it's still wet, you want to shake your embossing powder over it and then dump the extra off it. A lot of people say that they just can't get the hang of this, it's too hard. It's really, really simple. Stamp your design, put your embossing powder on it, shake off the extra and just tap it against there to get the extra off, and then you do need a heat type tool, and this is an embossing gun. It's different. People ask if you can use a hair dryer, and that usually doesn't work too well. It's just the air that comes out of a hair dryer is just too fierce. This is kind of a soft blowing tool, but it gets really hot. So I'm going to turn this on and melt the embossing powder. And this does take a few seconds. But as you can see, quickly it melts the powder and you have a nice embossed design in whatever color you want to use. So now, get that extra powder off there. This is going to get wrapped right around my top paper here. So I cut it just a little bit longer than the sides, and I'm going to fold it right around my design, and then I'm going to add score tape or other glue to keep it in place. So let's fold that right around there, and then I'm going to add my glue to get that stuck fast. So I'm just going to take score tape and just run a piece right over the top of my card there. And I'll peel off the backing. I'm just going to stick this around the edge just the way that I stick my paper on. So just lay this right on top of that score tape. Fold these pieces around the back. This is ready to go right on the front of our card. So we'll just press that right down there, and this card is finished. Thanks so much for watching.